This is the DRS Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Sheldon Alexander, and we've been making picks throughout the end of the NBA season and the NBA playoffs. To recap, on Monday's pod, we went 1-1, splitting the conference finals game one. But as we continue on, the record continues to cook. 34-26 against the spread in the play-in/playoffs, an overall record of 46-30-1 against the spread for my NBA picks overall. So remember to like and subscribe to the DRS Sports Podcast. Hit the button, hit the subscribe button right here on YouTube so that you'll never miss our betting insights. As we go to the Eastern Conference, I'm definitely not overreacting here. And, you know, the Miami Heat win, even though we're on the Miami Heat to win said game. They do that 118-107. Jimmy Buckets putting in some work with 41 points for Jimmy Butler, which, I mean, is a big time performance for him. We go to game two. Game two goes tonight. And we have the Heat favored by 3.5 points in that game. I look at that and I really want to lean on the Heat again, but I just can't because I see the series going extended. So I have to be on the Celtics in this game, Celtics plus 3.5. And as we go back to what happened in game one, biggest factor, obviously, no Marcus Smart and Al Horford in health and safety protocols, which I didn't even know health and safety protocols were a thing for games in Florida. Right?
Yeah,
like I thought Florida stopped doing that like a year ago, right? Like without getting too far into that side of things, but you know. Yeah. So no Marcus Smart, no Al Horford. That's two starters, right? Mm-hmm. So you add that to the fact that Boston is coming off of this hard-fought game 7, a physical game 7, and now you have to play game 1 against a super physical Miami Heat team without two of your starters. Mm-hmm. Miami's supposed to win that game, right? We're not going to make too much out of that. Jason Tatum, 21 in the first half, tied a career high for points in the first half. Boston led by as many as 13 in that first half, and then second half, all Miami. I mean, 22-2 run. Miami, 39-14, third quarter advantage. Jimmy Butler, 27 in the second half. The Heat remain undefeated at home in the playoffs, a complete turnaround in the second half. My question to you, though, and I know this might sound weird, but are the Heat better off with Gabe Vincent playing at 100% than Kyle Lowry playing at, I don't know, 70% or whatever he was at?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like we've talked about this, like you talked about it last week. So I'm just going off basically what you told us last week in that you're just like, I don't want Kyle Lowry out there hobbled around, right? You compared it to Fred VanVleet against Philadelphia. Like, I rather Gabe Vincent. And I'm like, but are we sure even Gabe Vincent's any good? And so again, I don't even really know the answer to that question necessarily, but like, listen, if we want to get deeper into it, right? Like when people were objecting to the idea of Kyle Lowry leaving Toronto, I'm like, you got to get, and I was way early on it, like too early on it, I should say. Like you can't just spend your entire career being undersized, a portion of that career being out of shape, and just taking charges your entire life. And like just, you know, cannonballing yourself around the court the entire time and not think that it's just going to fall right off the cliff. Right. And so the Raptors did a nice job of getting out of that as sort of fast as they possibly could. And so, you know, the point is like,
I still have, it still haunts me that there were rumors of them potentially getting Tyrese Maxey, and that just didn't happen because Kyle didn't want to go to Philly, and that still hurts my feelings. I can't.
That would be problematic. But you and I were on Miami in game 1 at -2. You had 24 hours out there to bet it at -2. It goes up to -4.5 upon those injury, etc. Announcements. The line closes -4.5. So quickly we get to write down in our notebook, okay, Smart and Horford combined mean 2.5 to the point spread. Now, what do they actually mean in a game, and how much of what happened in game 1 do you want to attribute to those guys being out? Because a couple of things here, right? One, the Celtics won 3 out of 4 quarters. It just unfortunately was a complete horror show in that third quarter where they lose that quarter by 25 points. Yeah. Well, you're not going to win a ton by, a ton of games when you lose a quarter by 25 points. And was Smart and Horford, and the requirement of the Celtics to have to go deeper down the bench, the reason that third quarter happened? Or was it just kind of variance, right? Did just the shots happen to fall in that third quarter or not fall in the case of Boston? Which brings me to our favorite element. The second thing, the shot quality. And this was a shot quality upset. Based on shot quality, the human beings, the individuals who took the shots and how open they were and the quality of those shots, the Celtics should have won the game. I think it was 105, 103, something along those lines. That's correct. Yeah, 105, 103. So and then we compare it to the actual score. Well, the actual score was 107, 118. So 105 to 107. Okay, the Celtics got what they should have got out of their offense, right? Like they didn't miss any more shots than they should have, or maybe one less shot.
Yeah.
The outlier situation was the Heat, right? So the Heat were, the outlier in that they made all of the shots, right? So the tougher the shot, they made it. So is that something that we can see going forward to game 2? Now, I don't know what the status is of Smart, and I don't know what the status is of Horford. Maybe you can sort of give us an update on that sort of deal for either of those guys, but the line's down to 3.5.
Yeah.
And so that means one of two things. One, either one of those players is going to come back and play, and we've adjusted back down to 1 point, because I would sort of say, based on what we've seen from when Smart was out of other games, he's probably closer to 1.5 or 2 of those 2.5 points. And Horford being out, for all of the excitement over how well he played against the Bucks, he's probably only worth 0.5 point on a game-to-game basis. And so, so option 1 is one of those guys is back and it's 3.5, or option 2 is just the element of the shot quality, right? So again, the people who are betting significantly are relying on these metrics. It's why we bring these up, because we can talk about narratives and do all of that sort of thing. And that helps us in a lot of ways, create a bet. But when we're talking about lines and how they get put into place, this is the stuff it's based off of, right? Yeah. The assumption here is that the Celtics are going to have this bounce back type performance, or even, it's not even really bounce back, because they played well enough in game 1 to win, creating shots and preventing good shots from Miami, or good enough shots from Miami. And so when we look at this game, I just go, this is a Celtics team, again, obviously injuries being what they were, but this is still a team that we were like minus 175 for the series. Like, that seems excessive. But you and I were looking at this game 1 going like, we're not really looking to weigh in on the series just yet. We want to watch one game. And I talked about how Miami -2 was sort of the like uncontroversial, the safe bet, if you will, because that sort of, doesn't put us on one side or another. Just goes, yeah, Miami's going to kind of hold serve here in game 1, which they did. But we have this one game, and we have this information that the Celtics, even without Smart and Horford, probably should have won the game based on shot quality. Now, again, if Miami's making tougher shots, or scoring more points than they should have, you immediately go, well, yeah, it's because the defense wasn't as good. But that's the point of having shot quality, right? Where we get to see, okay, like the defense was good enough to have them only score 103 points.
Yeah.
Miami just didn't, right? Miami just and maybe it was all Jimmy Butler and his 40 points, like making shots and those tough shots, right? But like, again, that's based on an average Jimmy Butler night, and he just had an above average Jimmy Butler night, right? This isn't sort of, versus replacement player type stuff here. So I just look at this and I go, okay, like even without those two guys, and as much as we could easily say, oh man, they met 10 points, they met 15 points in the point spread. Look at how easily, the Heat covered, so to speak. No, right? Like if fundamentally those guys don't mean that much on a game-to-game basis, right? We saw when Smart was out against the Bucks and that line moved drastically. You know what happened? The Celts won that game relatively easily anyway, right? And so I just look at this and I think this is an opportunity here, not in the same like value way that, like imagine like the Heat winning and this game going up to 5, up to 5.5, like the Warriors series. This is a different thing. I think this is a value opportunity to grab the Celtics here. Plus 120s are available on the series price. I think the money line here is a really good opportunity, whether or not Horford and Smart are in this game. I think this is a chance for the Celtics to even this series and then take it back to Boston, and things will get even more interesting going forward.
Yeah. So as of now, as we're recording this Thursday morning, Horford is unlikely to play as he's still in health and safety protocols. Okay. Marcus Smart is probable to play. Okay. And my assumption is Marcus Smart will play. Like if he's close, he's going to go out there and play. And from the basketball standpoint of it though, like Jimmy Butler, like that's just an extra body to throw at Jimmy Butler, even if it's just for a couple other possessions. You know, Marcus Smart being out there also means that they can switch those screens between Brown, Tatum, and Marcus Smart, you know, so Jimmy Butler, he had moments where Peyton Pritchard's out there and Pritchard's knocking down threes, but on the other end, Butler's just going to hunt him on the other side, right? You're not going to do that as much when it's Marcus Smart. So from a basketball standpoint, yeah, Marcus Smart does matter in that sense, right? Like it's not necessarily like a points, you know, he scores X amount of points as opposed to whoever his guy is. And shot quality, you're right. Like Jimmy Butler just hit super difficult shots that Jimmy Butler hits in the playoffs sometimes. Like that crazy stat of, you know, 40-point games for Jimmy Butler in the playoffs, it's like 5. And in the regular season, it's 0. Right. So it's just like, all right, cool. Sure, Jimmy, you know, sometimes he's just putting the team on his back. Horford is interesting to me because when he comes in, like Bam didn't really do much scoring wise. And I think eventually if the Heat are going to win this series, they need more from Bam scoring wise. And if Bam's not scoring when there is no Al Horford, like scoring against Al Horford and Time Lord, like, I don't know, like that's where I see Miami running into trouble. And then we're talking about what I'm talking about with the Mavs, where is Strus going to hit all those shots, right? 4 times, you know, is Tyler Hero going to come off the bench and give them the boost that he did when they were down early in the first quarter? Tyler Hero came out with that second unit in the middle of the first quarter, kind of bring Miami back because they were down, you know, comfortably early. So there's a lot going on in this series and a lot still to be played out. And I know my viewpoint is complete opposite than it was from the Mavs series, where I'm like, nope, this is what's going on in the Mavs series. This is done. This series, I know there's still a bunch of chess pieces to be moved in this series, and I can't wait to see it all. Like I'm so excited for this series to see how that plays out. But sorry, I interrupted you on one point there. You're going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, you mentioned if Smart's back, right? And so again, we talked about how he shifted, his absence shifted the line against the Bucks. It's like 2 points, something along those lines. So at 3.5 right now, well, that's a 1-point shift. So again, maybe that's the adjustment because it didn't really matter that Marcus Smart wasn't in the lineup in that game, in that one game against the Bucks. But if you think that a week and a half ago he was worth 2 points to the point spread, and you're only getting 1 point back, right? And you'll recall this was -2, right? This line was -2. Then you are getting value at this point. Like you are getting value on the Celtics because the line should be back closer to -2. Because you can't tell me, like right now, you're telling me that Horford is worth 1.5 points, right? With this line going from 2 to 3.5, that can't possibly be true. No. And we haven't even, you know, added into the element of the Celtics having lost game 1, right? Which again, like I've talked about before, like what is the true win probability after you lose game 1? Like that urgency level, how do we sort of, you know, mathematically factor that in? I wrote something about, you know, from a hockey standpoint about it, but like we see it all the time in basketball with the, you know, people call it the zigzag theory, right? Like you lose game 1, you back that team in game 2, but the market and the odds makers know that as well. And so they will shift it. And so if nobody had been injured and we had we had Miami -2, I think we would see Miami -1 in this game. And instead, you know, we've gone from 4.5 to 3.5. But if Smart's going to play, like that means something, maybe not as much as sort of the average fan might think from a point spread standpoint. So like, to me, this is like auto, like you have to hop on the Celtics +3.5 money line, all of that stuff. Of course, series price +120.
And as I said, Smart's probable. So I don't know if like, does it move another half point if like he is for sure in the lineup? You know,
I would imagine so.
Right. I would imagine so. either way, what you're saying is, I think now if you can still get them at 3.5 before, it's Smart. If you're probable, Smart is going to play, right? A guy like Marcus Smart, if he's probable to play, he's going to play. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, this
right?
is a get it while it's hot, right? Type situation.
Yeah.
As soon as he gets announced in, this line drops. That's just, I'd rather bet on that than the actual game, to be honest with you. But that's what we're doing, right? We're getting it at plus 3.5 before it goes to 2.5. Like, that's part of betting.
That's
and it might not matter in a 1 game sample size, but over 1,000 bets that we are going to make in our lifetime, over thousands of bets. Like, this is where the difference between, being at 52 versus being at 54% and point spread is, right?
Yeah. And I think too, the part that interests me so much about this series is what that means adjustment wise. And a lot of things that Spo was able to throw out on Tatum, kind of the same like basketball nerd things. I was interested in watching what Kerr was throwing out at Luka, whereas like, how do they handle the pick and roll against Luka and Tatum, right? And Tatum, a lot of times he came across that pick and roll and the Heat were just blitzing him, right? So he had to give the ball up. And then now you're talking about, okay, Grant Williams, you hit your 8 threes or whatever it was in game 7. Can you do that again? And he couldn't do it again, right? Yeah. Now he might be able to do it again in game 4, but these are the things and the chess pieces and the moves that are being made. And I don't know, as a basketball nerd, I love that side of it and how that's going to play out. Cause Jimmy is not going to drop 40. You know what I mean? He might have one other game like that, but he's not going to do that again. So.
And that's the point too, right? Because you mentioned, we talk about the unlikeliness of, the supporting characters sort of being able to replicate something on a very next game type of basis, right? But if Jimmy Butler misses all those shots that you said, like, oh, they were tough shots, yada yada yada.
Very tough.
If he misses those, we talk about like what the Celtics threw at Jimmy Butler defensively. Mm-hmm. Like, they threw enough. The point is, they threw enough at him to force him into tough shots. Mm-hmm. He just happened to make them in that game, and vice versa. Like, the Heat threw whatever it was they threw at Jason Tatum, he just didn't happen to make them. Now, there are, as you know, right? Like, Jason Tatum is fully capable of making those. Like, the Bucks threw a bunch of stuff at Jason Tatum when he had 40 plus points against them. He just happened to make them. And that's the amazing thing about the Jimmy Butlers and Jason Tatums of the world, is like, they just have games where, like, whatever you do defensively, like, they're impervious to it, right? They are still awesome in those situations.
This is going to sound weird, but like, hearing superstars talk about what happens in the NBA as you age in the league and the game just sort of slows down for you, I think that's the next level. Someone texted me and they're like, I'm so confused by Jason Tatum. One game he looks like he's a top 5 player in the league, and then the next game it's like, what the hell just happened? And I think in a series like this, you see the adjustment. He wasn't able to adjust to the different game plan the Heat threw at him in the second half. Whereas Jimmy Butler was like, okay, I'm going to get to the basket, right? Boston's making a bit of a run here. I'm going to get fouled and shoot free throws. That's how I'm controlling this game and pacing out this game and stopping the runs. That's just the vet nature of what you're able to do in a game. But either way, super excited to see what's going on tonight in the NBA action, as we are both on the Celtics and we are differing on the Warriors and Mavs game 2, but that's okay. That's why we're here, to discuss it all and discuss everything that is the NBA playoffs as that continues to just entertain me night in, night out. I'm loving this.